With the Pokemon Home update finally coming to Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, we have some new toys to play with in the Pokemon Draft League. We have some fantastic new scary threats, like Ursaluna, Sneasler, and Hooper Unbound, as well as some fantastic defensive pieces, like Slowking Gala, Zapdos, and Landorus Therian returning to the game. Before I take you through my drafting process, we decided to ban a few things, such as Pokemon like Magearna, Chienpao, and Fluttermane, because, in the words of Joey,
because they're broken as shit.
Basically due to them being too powerful for the counter-team style format. Certain moves like Shed Tail, Revival Blessing, and Last Respects were also banned. The Pokemon Premier League uses a point-based system for the drafting process, which means strong Pokemon like Dragapult or I Am Valiant will cost 19 points, whereas weaker Pokemon like Bellibolt or Charizard only cost 6 points.
We also decided to only allow Pokemon with a 9-point value or below to terrestrialize, minus a few exceptions to this rule.
Like Regieleki or Venomoth, due to having good setup options or being too powerful with the terrestrialization, but not quite strong enough to be moved above 9 points. Coaches were given a 15-point budget to select either 2 or 3 Terra Captains of their choice, allowing them to terrestrialize into 1 stab typing and 2 additional 3 types. For example, if I picked Lowkix as a Terra Captain, it can Terra into the Dark, Fighting, and Ground type. Lastly, the PPL follows most smoking clauses, meaning Sleep Clause and Stat Passing are banned. Alright, with that information out of the way, let's get to my first pick. I was 5th in the draft order out of 14 coaches, which means I had a pretty good chance of getting something I really wanted to use out of the S tier picks. I decided to start with Tornadus Therian. With its reliable speed tier of 121, good bulk paired with its regenerator ability and its crazy good move pool, Torncy is going to be an extremely versatile threat for my squad. Whilst it may have lost some moves like Knockoff and Defog this generation, it did gain access to its new move called Bleakwood Storm. It's a 100 base power move that has a chance to lower your opponent's speed. This allows Tornadus Therian to pivot even more freely than before, lowering the speed of anything that wants to come in and take a potential hit, and being able to safely U-turn out into a defensive check or even bring in a powerful wall breaker. I then had to wait an agonising 20 picks for my next turn, and during this time I was seeing Pokemon with the likes of Chi-Yu, Ursaluna and Sneasler all get picked, but there was one Pokemon that I had my eyes on, which was Galarian Slowking. Unfortunately, another coach took it before it got back to me, so instead we picked up Landorus Therian for our second squad member. With our second genie on the team, we've acquired a strong pivot and one of the best hazard setters in the entire game. There's a reason why this Pokemon has been dominating in the OU tier for the past decade. It's incredibly versatile, and whilst again it may have lost some moves due to the home transfer, it now has access to Nasty Plot and its new signature move, Sandsteer Storm, a 100 base power ground type move with a chance to burn. Schooled users eat your heart out. For my first 2 picks, we have a huge ice weakness, and for this reason I planned on selecting Heatran for my third member. However, PokeMMD took it before I had the chance, so instead I opted for Rotom Wash. This adds another ground immunity to my team and another pivot. Rotom Wash has a variety of sets that it can run, whether it wants to be offensive, defensive, or a support variant with screen support or a trick user. Since Rotom has a dual type of water and electric, my opponents will really have to think twice about switching in their ground type Pokemon to prevent me from volt switching. Now that I have 3 amazing pivots to start off my draft, we're looking to pick up a powerful wall breaker, and whilst Tornadus and Landorus both have their offensive capabilities, I don't want to have to rely on them every week to run the same sets. So with that in mind, I decided to pick up Hooper Unbound, an absolutely crazy powerhouse with some good coverage options. It has an astounding base attack of 160 and an even higher special attack of 170. Slap a Choice Band on that bad boy or a Choice Specs and this thing is bound to claim a few kills. It also gives me one of the strongest stab knockoff users in the entire game, and with the lack of hazard removal on this generation, removing items such as heavy duty boots is going to provide me with so much value. Hooper's signature move also breaks through Protect and Substitute, meaning it's going to be a very powerful stall breaker for my team. Not to mention it gets access to Gunk Shot, making fairy types a lot less likely to come in against me. Speaking of hazard options, I was pretty limited with my choices so far. The best thing left on the board for this was Diancie, a Pokemon I haven't really used before. What it lacks in speed it makes up for in bulk and very usable physical and special attack stats. Great moves such as Diamond Storm, which has a 50% chance to boost its defense by 2 stages, Moonblast, and Body Press, which can even take advantage of the Diamond Storm boosts. Plus, it boosts fantastic utility options in Trick Room and Screens. On top of this, Diancie gains access to Spikes this generation to partner with Stealth Rock, and with its incredible bulk, setting up hazards shouldn't really be an issue and frees up Landorus to play a more offensive role for the team. Diancie also gives me the Fairy typing, the best typing in the game. It tends to lure in Steel types, which my team can deal with relatively well, and if I use the move Baton Pass, I'm free to go out into my Landorus and fire off some free damage. So remember earlier when I mentioned that only certain Pokemon were able to terrestrialize? Looking at my remaining points, it was time to look at some low budget options, and for 7 points, I decided to add Frosmoth to my team. With its hidden ability Ice Scales, paired paired with reliable recovery, I've gained a decent specially defensive wall. Since Frostmoth has a ton of weaknesses, I decided to make it one of my Terra Captains. It will be able to terrestrialize into the ice, water or ground type. Usually Frostmoth would lure in a bulky water or powerful fire types, but with my new typings, my opponents will now have to think twice whilst preparing their teams when they face me. The PPL also decided that Frostmoth was able to terrestrialize and use its setup move, Quiver Dance, which means I'll be able to break things like bulky grass or water types, which Rotom Wash or Landorus would otherwise struggle with. This also gives me a form of hazard removal, and whilst it isn't the most reliable defogger, it can still help me out in a pinch. With 6 picks under my belt, we're still missing a few things, one of them being a Steel type, so for my next pick I decided to pick up Revavroom. At 8 points, this was relatively inexpensive, which was great since we were looking a little low on the budget side. This funny little card provides a lot for my draft, most importantly being a massive Fairy Resist, as well as being a grounded poison type. In Draft League format, having a grounded poison type is essential so you're able to remove toxic spikes from your side of the field. Revavroom gets access to moves like Shift Gear and Iron Defense, and paired with Terrestrialization can become another dangerous setup sweeper. I decided on Poison, Ground and Flying Terra types. This will give me powerful double stab bonus gunk shots, which will absolutely annihilate any fairies that stand in my way. The ground typing will help me with Steel type matchups, which usually Revavroom wouldn't really be able to break. And lastly, the Flying Terra type means my opponents will really have to think twice if they want to click a ground type move against my silly little car. Most importantly, I think it would be hilarious to run my opponents over with Lightning McQueen. Ka-chow! As the draft kept progressing, I noticed that there was still a gigantic threat available on the board, so on round 8 I picked up Hydreigon. Sniping under the radar in the process? Get fucked, loser. This gives me the dragon type that I was lacking before, a good Choice Scarf user as well as another setup threat with access to both Dragon Dance and Nasty Plot. This also gives me my 4th ground immunity, so my opponents are really deterred from bringing any ground type coverage against me, which Revavroom and Diancie can both take full advantage of. And whilst Hydreigon is my 2nd dark type Pokemon, it does entirely different things to Hooper, one of them being a fantastic lure for fairy types. I can U-turn out on these fairies and bring in my Steel type. It also has decent bulk and could make for a good Assault Vest user for special water, fire or electric type threats in a pinch. My points have gotten really low at this point, and I'm still fairly weak to ice types, and for this reason I made Hariyama my next pick. This Pokemon has a gargantuan HP stat, with access to the ability Thick Vat, meaning ice types or ice type coverage won't really be able to touch it. With the Guts ability, it will further deter my opponents from bringing toxic spikes, freeing up Revavroom to terrestrialize into the flying or ground type if it needs to. Hariyama also got access to Drain Punch's generation, making defensive sets a little more reliable and giving it a bit more longevity paired with Fake Out plus Leftovers recovery. It also gives me another knockoff user that lures in flying types. Getting rid of heavy duty boots off certain users like Zapdos or even Mew or Slowbro will put things in range for my Hooper Unbound or Tornadus that would otherwise miss out on KOs. Not to mention Guts boosted Facade or Close Combat is going to do some fucking serious damage to some walls. At this point we're almost finished with the draft. I have my 2 Terra Captains, a bunch of bulky pivots, as well as 2 or 3 incredibly powerful wall breakers. Since I'm lacking in hazard removal, I decided for my last 2 picks that this is what I was really going to focus on. And to those of you that have been paying attention to this generation, not a lot of good Pokemon get access to these things. This is where Lurantis comes in. I don't really have a lot to say about this Pokemon, it's fucking Lurantis. It does get access to Defog though, so that's gotta count for something, right? I decided to finish off my draft with Kamala. Not only is this Pokemon absolutely adorable, it provides me with a Rapid Spin user as well as another pivot. This little dude actually has some bonkers coverage, a priority option and Sucker Punch, as well as getting access to the move Wish. This will help keep things like Landorus and Diancie stay at good health, 2 Pokemon that otherwise wouldn't have reliable recovery outside of rest. Lastly, with its Comatose ability, Kamala is immune to status, meaning it can't get chipped down by poison or burn damage, also making it immune to toxic spikes. So there we have it. What do you think of my team? What would you have done differently? Let me know down in the comments below, and feel free to roast my draft if you want. Be as brutal or as kind as you like. While there are a few notable issues, like hazard control and kind of dodgy speed tiers, I feel like my draft is pretty well rounded and very versatile, which was kind of what I was hoping for. Huge shout out to my friend Luxant, he pretty much helped me throughout this entire drafting process, and if we do lose a game this season, be sure to put all the blame on him. And with that, we come to the end of my draft analysis. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more in-depth Draft League content, be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!